There is a place on her body that most men have never touched, not because they have not been close enough, not because the opportunity was never there, because nobody told them it existed, and because the touch that activates it looks so unremarkable from the outside that even when it happens by accident, the man doing it has no idea what he just triggered inside her. That place is not what you are thinking. It is not where your mind immediately went. It is somewhere most men walk right past every single time. And the response it produces when touched correctly, at the right velocity, with the right quality of intention, is documented in peer reviewed neuroscience as one of the most direct pathways to female sexual arousal that the human nervous system contains. By the end of this video, you will know exactly where it is, exactly how to touch it, and exactly what happens inside her brain and her body in the seconds after you do. Stay with me, because the piece I am saving for the end is not the location. The location you will have in the first 3 minutes. What I am saving for the end is the thing that determines whether the touch produces what I am describing or produces nothing at all. The thing that turns the same physical gesture from something she barely registers into something she thinks about for the next 3 days. And it is not what you expect. Why? Everything you were taught about touch is incomplete. Most of what men know about touching women was learned through a combination of trial, error, observation, and the occasional piece of advice that arrived without any scientific foundation whatsoever. The result is a functional but deeply incomplete understanding of what touch actually does inside a woman's nervous system. Here is what the neuroscience shows that most conversations never include. The human skin contains two completely separate and distinct touch systems. The first is the discriminative system, fast conducting myelinated nerve fibers that process the objective properties of touch: location, pressure, texture, temperature. This is the system that tells you where and what. This is the system most men are operating on when they touch a woman. They are thinking about location and pressure, and they believe those are the variables that matter. They are not the variables that matter, not for what we are talking about tonight. The second system is the affective system, slow conducting, unmyelinated C-tactile afferent nerve fibers, CT afferents, that process the emotional and social meaning of touch. These fibers do not report location or pressure. They report something else entirely, something that bypasses the analytical processing centers of the brain and travels directly to the insular cortex, the region responsible for emotional integration and interoception, the felt sense of one's own body. When CT afferents are activated correctly, the signal they send does not register in the mind, it registers in the body as warmth, as a spreading awareness, as the specific, involuntary physical response that the woman experiencing it did not choose and cannot entirely account for. CT afferents have a very specific activation profile. They respond maximally to light, slow stroking touch, not firm pressure, light contact, not fast movement, slow movement. The research is precise about the optimal velocity, approximately 2 to 5 centimeters per second. Faster than that, and the signal shifts to the discriminative system. Slower than that, and the activation diminishes. Within that specific window, something happens in her nervous system that no other form of touch can reliably produce. And here's the part that changes everything. Research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that CT afferent activation is directly and significantly correlated with sexual desire in women specifically, not in men, in women. The ability to perceive the difference between CT optimal and CT suboptimal touch correlated positively with a woman's desire for sexual interaction, which means that this specific nerve fiber system is not just a general pleasure pathway. It is a dedicated channel that connects certain kinds of touch directly to female sexual desire at the neurological level. Now, where are these fibers most densely concentrated? The place men always ignore. I want to show you something before I tell you the location, because understanding why this specific area is the one men consistently overlook makes the information land with a different weight than if I simply told you and moved on. Research using direct CT afferent activation measurements has identified the highest concentration of these fibers in hairy, non-glabrous skin, not the obvious erogenous zones most men think about first. The areas of the body covered in fine hair: the forearm, the upper arm, the shoulder, the upper back, and most significantly, with the highest documented female-specific response in the peer-reviewed literature. The neck. A study published in 2018 that measured both pleasantness and sexual arousal responses to CT optimal versus CT suboptimal touch on different body parts found a specific and significant gender difference. While men and women rated forehead touch similarly, women rated neck touch as significantly more pleasant and significantly more arousing than the same touch applied elsewhere. The neck showed higher mean arousal scores for females than any other non-genital area tested, and the response to light stroking touch on the neck was specifically and measurably superior to other forms of contact on the same area. The neck. Not because it is conventionally romantic or because it appears in films or because some cultural script designated it as significant, because the biology of the female nervous system has dense CT afferent innervation in that area, and because the direct pathway from those fibers to the insular cortex and from there to the arousal response is one of the most consistent findings in current touch neuroscience. Men ignore it for one reason. It does not look like what they were taught arousal should look like from the outside. It looks gentle. It looks almost casual. It looks like the kind of touch that does not seem significant enough to produce the response it actually produces. And so it gets skipped entirely in favor of approaches that feel more dramatic and produce far less. I want you to picture a specific moment. You are close to a woman. The conversation has reached a quality of warmth and genuine presence. Your hand moves to the back of her neck or along the side of it, light, slow, unhurried, in the exact velocity the research documents as CT optimal. You are not reaching for anything. You are not building toward anything. You are simply, warmly, completely present in that contact. What happens inside her in the next 30 seconds is not under her conscious control. The CT afferents fire, the signal travels to her insular cortex. Oxytocin releases from the hypothalamus. Her amygdala activation decreases, her cortisol drops, and her dopamine system receives a reward signal that is going to keep returning to the memory of this contact for the next several hours without her permission. She did not decide any of that. Her nervous system did it for her. But now I need to stop, because there is something critically important that the location alone cannot tell you. Something that determines whether what I just described actually happens or whether the same physical gesture produces nothing. This is the piece most men would never think to ask about, and the piece the research makes completely clear. If this is making sense to you right now, hit the like button right now, because the information in this video represents years of peer-reviewed research distilled into something you can actually use, and every person who engages helps another man find this at exactly the moment he needs it. Now let me give you the piece that makes all of this real. Why the same touch can produce everything or nothing. Here is what the neuroscience of affective touch reveals that almost nobody talks about in this context. CT afferent activation is not just a function of velocity and location. It is modulated by expectation, motivation, and relational context. Research using fMRI showed that the brain's response to identical physical touch stimuli changes dramatically based on the psychological state of both the toucher and the receiver and the relational context in which the touch occurs. The same light stroking touch on the same area of skin produces measurably different neural responses depending on what the receiver believes about who is touching her and in what state they are doing it. There is a specific study that makes this undeniable. Researchers manipulated participants' beliefs about the gender and relational relationship of the person touching them. Touch that participants believed came from someone they were emotionally connected to produced significantly higher activation in the ventral striatum, the brain's primary reward center, and the orbitofrontal cortex associated with emotional valuation than identical touch from a neutral party. The physical input was the same. The neurological output was completely different. Because touch pleasantness and touch arousal are not primarily properties of the touch itself. They are properties of the relationship between the toucher and the receiver, processed by the receiver's brain in real time. What this means in direct practical terms is this. The touch I described, light, slow, CT optimal contact on the neck, will produce the full neurological arousal response I described only if it arrives in a specific relational context. Specifically, in a context where two things are true simultaneously. First, she is already in a state of genuine emotional openness to you, which is produced by the quality of presence and attention you brought to everything leading up to that moment. Second, The touch itself arrives with the specific quality of someone who is completely, unhurriedly present in the contact, not performing it, not building towards something with it, inhabiting it. This is the part that makes the touch powerful or makes it nothing. Not the location, not the velocity, the state of the man doing the touching. Research on the autonomic nervous system response to affective touch shows that women specifically demonstrate higher physiological responsiveness to touch than men, and that this responsiveness is significantly modulated by the emotional context of the interaction. A woman's skin conductance, heart rate, and reported arousal in response to identical touch stimuli vary dramatically based on the relational and emotional context surrounding the contact. She is not just receiving a physical input, she is reading the entire relational field through the medium of that input, which means that what her CT afferents are actually transmitting to her insular cortex is not just the physical quality of the touch, it is the quality of the person behind it, the settledness, the presence, the specific absence of agenda or performance, the sense of a man who has nowhere else he needs to be and nothing else he needs to prove in this moment. That information travels through the same nerve fibers as the physical sensation, and it lands in the same part of her brain. And it produces, when it is real, a neurological response that the most technically correct touch from the wrong internal state can never replicate. What this looks like in every real moment. Let me make this completely concrete, because everything I have described lives in the abstract until it lives in an actual interaction. You are with her. The conversation has been real. You have been genuinely present, not performing presence, but inhabiting it. There is warmth between you that neither of you has manufactured. At some point in that warmth, your hand moves to the back of her neck, not as a move, not as the execution of a strategy you formulated in advance, as the natural expression of someone who is close to a person they find compelling and whose physical awareness of that person has produced a completely natural, unplanned response. Your touch is light, not tentatively light, the lightness of a man who is unsure of himself, warmly light, the specific lightness of someone who is delivering something, not taking something. Your movement is slow, not deliberately slow in the calculated way of someone who has memorized a velocity figure. Naturally slow, the rhythm of a man whose nervous system is regulated and unhurried and entirely comfortable with what is happening. You hold the contact for the natural duration of the moment, not counting, not monitoring, simply present in the contact for as long as the moment contains it. And in her body, below every thought she will have about what is happening, the CT afferents fire. The insular cortex receives the signal. The ventral striatum activates. Her dopamine system records the reward. Her oxytocin rises. Her cortisol drops. Her amygdala goes quiet. She experiences this as warmth, as a specific physical awareness of you that was not there 30 seconds ago, as something in her body responding to your presence in a way she did not decide and cannot fully account for, as a thought that will return later that evening while she is doing something else without any invitation. That is the touch working exactly as the neuroscience predicts it will work when it arrives from the right place. This is precisely the depth that Madison Miller explores in complete detail, because the specific cultivation of the internal state that makes this touch real rather than performed, how to build genuine presence and genuine settledness so that every physical contact carries the quality her nervous system is actually reading, is the most important work a man can do in this context. But what I want you to carry from tonight is the foundation that makes all of it possible. The touch that drives women sexually crazy is not the dramatic one. It is not the forceful one. It is not the one that announces itself or builds toward something obvious. It is the one that arrives quietly in a place most men walk right past with a velocity the neuroscience documents to the centimeter, from a man whose internal state is so genuinely settled and so completely present that what travels through his hands is not just sensation. It is him, all of him, in 3 square inches of light, slow, unhurried contact on the back of her neck. And her nervous system will still be processing it 3 days from now. You have touched that area before, probably more than once, without knowing what you had access to, without understanding what you were within reach of. Now you know. And what you do with that knowledge In the next real moment you find yourself close enough to use it will be the difference between a gesture that passes and a moment she carries with her longer than she can explain. Subscribe to this channel right now because this is where the actual neuroscience of physical attraction gets spoken in plain language that you can use in real life, not theory, not guesswork. Peer-reviewed research translated into the understanding that changes how you are present with every woman you are ever close to. Like this video and share it with someone who has been touching women without knowing what he had access to. And the next video goes even deeper into the specific physiological responses that most men have no idea they are triggering or failing to trigger. Do not miss it.